Money laundering is the illegal process of concealing the origins of money obtained illegally by passing it through a complex sequence of banking transfers or commercial transactions. The overall scheme of this process returns the clean money to the launderer in an obscure and indirect way. One problem of criminal activities is accounting for the proceeds without raising the suspicion of law enforcement agencies. Considerable time and effort may be put into strategies that enable the safe use of those proceeds without raising unwanted suspicion. Implementing such strategies is generally called money laundering. After money has been laundered by banks, it can be used for legitimate purposes. Many jurisdictions have set up sophisticated financial and other monitoring systems to enable law enforcement agencies to detect suspicious transactions or activities. And many have set up international cooperative arrangements to assist each other in these endeavors. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime estimates that the amount of money laundered globally in 1 year is 2 to 5% of global GDP, or $800 billion to $2 trillion in current US dollars. In a number of legal and regulatory systems, the term money laundering has become conflated with other forms of financial and business crime, and is sometimes used more generally to include misuse of the financial system when regulating the financial system. Some countries render obfuscation of money sources as constituting money laundering, whether intentional or by merely using financial systems or services that do not identify or track sources or destinations. Other countries define money laundering in such a way as to include money from activity that would have been a crime in that country, even if the activity was legal where the conduct occurred. Laws against money laundering were created to use against organized crime during the period of Prohibition in the United States during the 1930s. Organized crime received a major boost from Prohibition and a large source of new funds that were obtained from illegal sales of alcohol. The successful prosecution of Al Capone on tax evasion brought in a new emphasis by the state and law enforcement agencies to track and confiscate money. But existing laws against tax evasion could not be used once gangsters started paying their taxes. In the 1980s, the war on drugs led governments again to turn to money laundering rules in an attempt to track and seize the proceeds of drug crimes in order to catch the organizers and individuals running drug empire. It also had the benefit, from a law enforcement point of view, of turning rules of evidence upside down. Law enforcers normally have to prove an individual is guilty to seize their property. But with money laundering laws, money can be confiscated and it is up to the individual to prove that the source of funds is legitimate to get the money back. This makes it much easier for law enforcement agencies and provides for much lower burdens of proof. However, this process has been abused by some law enforcement agencies to take and keep money without strong evidence of related criminal activity, to be used to supplement their own budgets. The September 11th attacks in 2001, which led to the Patriot Act in the US and similar legislation worldwide, led to a new emphasis on money laundering laws to combat terrorism financing. The Group of 7 nations used the Financial Action Task Force on money laundering to put pressure on governments around the world to increase surveillance and monitoring of financial transactions. and share this information between countries. Starting in 2002, governments around the world upgraded money laundering laws and surveillance and monitoring systems of financial transactions. Anti-money laundering regulations have become a much larger burden for financial institutions, and enforcement has stepped up significantly. During 2011 to 2015, a number of major banks faced ever-increasing fines for breaches of money laundering regulations. This included HSBC, which was fined $1.9 billion in December 2012, and BNP Paribas, which was fined $8.9 billion in July 2014 by the US government. Many countries introduced strengthened border controls on the amount of cash that can be carried, and introduced central transaction reporting systems where all financial institutions have to report all financial transactions electronically. For example, in 2006, Australia set up the AUSTRAC system and required the reporting of all financial transactions. Money laundering is the conversion or transfer of property, the concealment or disguising of the nature of the proceeds, the acquisition, possession or use of property, knowing that these are derived from criminal activity, or participating in or assisting the movement of funds to make the proceeds appear legitimate. Money obtained from certain crimes, such as extortion, insider trading, drug trafficking, and illegal gambling is dirty, and nay,